wasn't just a kiss. It was a moment that rewrote everything I believed about myself. Two boys, hiding in silence, caught in a secret gay love story no one was meant to know. My chest pounded with fear, but his lips on mine turned it into courage. That forbidden gay romance became my only truth. I never thought a single summer could change the way I saw myself. At the time, it all felt so ordinary. The long afternoons, the games of basketball in the cracked driveway, the late-night conversations that stretched into hours when neither of us wanted to say goodnight. His name was Ryan. He was only 2 years older than me, but that small gap felt like a lifetime. He had this effortless confidence about him, the kind I used to envy. While I stumbled through my words and second-guessed every little thing, Ryan walked into every room like he belonged there. He wasn't the loudest, but people listened when he spoke. And when he laughed, God, that laugh, it filled every corner of the space we were in. I was 17 then, on the edge of everything. 17 meant not quite a kid anymore, but not entirely a man either. It meant living in the in-between, where everything felt fragile and overwhelming all at once. Ryan knew me better than anyone. We had been friends since middle school, though our bond really deepened when he started spending more time at my house during my junior year. His own family life was complicated. Arguments behind closed doors, a father who barely looked him in the eye. So our house became his escape. He came over for dinner often, sometimes even stayed the night. My mom adored him. My brother thought of him like another sibling. To me, he was different. I'd never admit it back then, not even to myself, but I watched him more closely than I should have. The way his hair curled at the ends when he didn't bother to style it. The tiny scar above his eyebrow from a skateboard accident. The strength in his arms. The ease with which he carried himself. He wasn't just my friend. He was something more, though I didn't have the words for it yet. And maybe that was why every time he brushed against me accidentally, my skin lit up. Why my chest tightened when he called me kid, even though I hated the nickname. Why I found myself memorizing his favorite things, the kind of chips he liked, the way he always asked for extra ice in his soda, the songs he replayed until everyone else was sick of them. But none of that mattered, not really, because we were just two boys and he didn't see me that way. Or at least, that's what I told myself. The summer nights were the hardest to ignore. It became a ritual. We'd stay up late in my room, sprawled across the floor with snacks and soda cans scattered between us. Sometimes we played video games. Other times we just talked. Ryan had this way of pulling things out of me I didn't even know I was carrying. My fears about college. My doubts about fitting in. The secret ache of not knowing who I really was. Why do you worry so much? He'd ask, tossing a pillow at me when I overthought something trivial. Because it's easier than pretending I have it all figured out. I'd reply, and then he'd smile at me, a kind of smile that made me feel seen in a way no one else ever managed. It was terrifying. It was addictive. One night, when the rain tapped softly against the window, I caught myself staring at him longer than I should have. He was lying on his back, scrolling through his phone, the light reflecting across his face. His expression was calm, unguarded. I felt a sudden rush of something, longing, fear, maybe both. I quickly looked away, my cheeks burning, praying he hadn't noticed. But part of me wanted him to. The more time we spent together, the harder it became to ignore the feelings bubbling inside me. The smallest things started to feel like signs. The way his knee brushed against mine, and neither of us moved. The way he sometimes looked at me with this unreadable expression, like he was trying to figure something out. Once, we were watching a scary movie in the dark, and I flinched at a jump scare. He laughed softly and placed his hand briefly on my shoulder. "Relax, it's just a movie," he said. But his hand lingered a moment too long before pulling away. And when it did, the absence felt unbearable. I lay awake that night, replaying the scene over and over in my head, wondering if I had imagined it. The world outside didn't know anything about the war I was fighting inside. At school, I kept up the act. I laughed at the right jokes, nodded at the right stories, played the role of the boy everyone expected me to be. But when it was just me and Ryan, the mask slipped. He saw the parts of me no one else bothered to notice. And maybe that's what scared me the most. Because if he could see all of me, what would happen if he saw this part too? The part that wanted him. The part that wasn't supposed to exist. Still, I couldn't stay away. One evening, after a long day of basketball, we sat on the porch steps as the sun sank into the horizon. The air smelled of grass and fading heat. Ryan leaned back on his elbows, closing his eyes. "This is the best part of summer," he said softly. "What is?" I asked. "This," he replied, opening his eyes to look at me, just feeling free. The way he said it, the way his gaze lingered on mine, it felt like he was talking about something else entirely. My heart pounded. I wanted to ask him, wanted to push, but I stayed quiet, because the truth was, I wasn't free at all. I was trapped by fear of myself, of what people would say, of what it would mean if I admitted how I felt about him. But the way he looked at me that night planted something inside me, a seed of hope, a whisper that maybe, just maybe, he felt it too. That summer began with laughter, with games and secrets and inside jokes. But underneath it all was a quiet storm, building, waiting for the right moment to break. And deep down, I knew that moment was coming. It's strange how the things we remember most clearly aren't the big moments, but the quiet ones. When I think back to that summer with Ryan, it isn't the games we won or the places we went that stand out. It's the little details. The way his shoes squeaked on the driveway during late-night basketball, the sound of his voice echoing down the hallway when he called my name, the faint smell of the cologne that lingered even after he left my room. Those details haunted me. The more time we spent together, the more they piled up until I could no longer ignore the truth. Every part of me was drawn to him. Ryan had this habit of making my room feel like it belonged to both of us. His hoodie often ended up on the back of my chair. His phone charger was plugged in by my bed. Sometimes I find his empty soda can still on the desk the next morning. It should have annoyed me. Instead, it felt like proof he was leaving little pieces of himself behind, reminders that he wasn't just passing through, he was staying. But staying came with its own complications. One Saturday night, my parents had gone out, and my brother was at a friend's place. Ryan and I ordered pizza and spread it out across the living room floor. The movie we picked wasn't even that interesting, but halfway through, I realized I wasn't paying attention to the screen at all. I was watching him. The flickering light from the TV cast shadows across his face, softening the edges of his jaw, making him look almost unreal. His lips curved into a grin at something ridiculous in the movie, and my chest tightened. I had to force myself to look away before he noticed. But maybe he did, because after a long pause, I felt his eyes on me. "What?" I asked, pretending to laugh, grabbing another slice of pizza like I was completely unbothered. "Nothing," he said, though his gaze lingered for a second longer before he turned back to the screen. That second burned into me. The silence between us started to feel heavier as the weeks went on. It wasn't uncomfortable, not exactly, but it carried something unsaid, something we both seemed to circle around without ever naming. Sometimes we'd sit on the porch late at night, not saying anything at all, just breathing the same air, listening to the crickets, the quiet hum of the neighborhood. My hand would rest on the step beside his, and though there were inches between us, I swear I could feel the electricity pulling us closer. And then, like always, nothing happened. I told myself it was better this way, that what I wanted was impossible. Still, I couldn't stop noticing the cracks in his armor. For all his confidence, Ryan carried shadows too. I saw them when he thought no one was looking, the way his jaw clenched when his phone lit up with his dad's name, the way he avoided talking about the future like it was a topic too heavy to touch. One night, lying on the floor of my room after another endless conversation, he sighed and said, "You ever feel like you don't belong anywhere?" The words hit me like a secret I wasn't supposed to hear. "Yeah," I admitted quietly. "All the time." Our eyes met in the dim light. His expression softened, and for a moment, it felt like we weren't just sharing words. We were sharing pieces of ourselves we never showed anyone else. He didn't say anything after that, but he didn't need to. Things began to shift in small, almost invisible ways. One evening, after a late basketball game in the driveway, we collapsed onto the grass. The summer air was thick. Stars scattered across the sky, like someone had spilled glitter on black velvet. "You're terrible at defense," Ryan teased, nudging me with his elbow. "Please, I let you win." I shot back, though we both knew it wasn't true. He laughed, rolling onto his side to look at me. I could feel his gaze, but I didn't dare meet it. My heart was beating so loudly I thought he might hear it. When I finally turned my head, his face was closer than I expected. Too close. My breath caught. For a split second, I thought he was going to close the distance. But he didn't. He rolled back onto his back, stretching his arms above his head with a yawn. "We should crash soon," he said casually, as if nothing had happened. And just like that, the moment was gone. But once a door opens, even just a crack, it never closes all the way again. The near misses became more frequent. The almost, the coulda-beens. His shoulder brushing mine when we walked side by side. The way his laughter lingered in the air like a song meant only for me. The way he sometimes said my name, softer than usual, as if it meant something more than just 2 syllables. And me, I kept pretending not to notice. Pretending my chest didn't ache every time I stopped myself from reaching out. Because the truth was, I didn't know what would happen if I crossed that line. Would he push me away? Would he laugh? Or worse, would he leave? I couldn't risk losing him. Not when he meant more to me than anyone ever had. Still, no matter how much I tried to bury it, the feeling grew stronger. It was there when he leaned too close to show me something on his phone. It was there when he dozed off beside me, his head tipping toward my shoulder. It was there in every quiet second when we were alone and the world outside faded away. It was inescapable. One night, lying awake after he'd finally fallen asleep in the bed next to mine, I stared at the ceiling and whispered words into the dark I'd never said aloud. "I want you." And even though he didn't hear them, I felt a weight lift. Because for the first time, I wasn't lying to myself anymore. Looking back now, I realized the summer was already changing us, weaving us into something neither of us fully understood yet. But I felt it, even then, that the line between us was growing thinner, that we were inching closer to something dangerous, something I wasn't sure I was ready for. And though I tried to convince myself it was all in my head, deep down I knew something was about to happen, something that would change everything. The next morning, sunlight spilled into the room, cutting through the soft shadows and landing on his sleeping face. For a long moment, I just watched him, the curve of his jaw, the way his lips parted slightly as he breathed, the slight flutter of his eyelids. My chest tightened in a way I couldn't name, and I realized that these small, unnoticed details were the ones that made my heart race. I wanted to reach out, to brush a stray lock of hair from his forehead, or tuck his hand under the blanket, so it rested against mine. But I didn't. I froze, trapped by the fear that one wrong move could shatter the fragile balance between us. The whispered words I'd spoken into the dark, the "I want you," still lingered on my lips. I had finally admitted it to myself, yet saying it aloud to him felt impossible. Eventually, I slipped out of bed, careful not to disturb him, and moved toward the window. The city outside shimmered in the heat, the air thick with the scent of asphalt and sun-baked stone. I let my mind wander, tracing the path of the past few weeks, of every smile, every accidental brush of skin, every late-night conversation that left me feeling exposed and alive. That summer was weaving us together in ways I hadn't expected, and every thread tightened with each passing day. By the time he stirred and finally opened his eyes, the room was bright, the world outside too loud and too real to ignore. He smiled at me, slow and lazy, and something inside me fluttered. "Morning," he said, voice still husky from sleep. "Morning." I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. Breakfast was quiet at first. We moved around each other with familiarity that bordered on intimacy, passing the butter, reaching for the same mug, brushing against each other in ways that were innocent on the surface but charged underneath. I kept catching myself staring, memorizing the way his hands moved, the way the sunlight caught the strands of his hair, the way his smile could make me feel unmoored. Finally, he broke the silence. "Do you want to go out today?" "Just wander." I nodded. "Yeah, that sounds good." We walked through the city streets, our steps unconsciously falling into sync. The heat clung to our skin, sticky and relentless, but it didn't matter. Conversation flowed easily at first, discussions about books, music, and small trivialities, but there were moments, fleeting and intense, when our eyes met and held too long. Every glance felt like it carried meaning. Every accidental brush of our arms a spark I couldn't control. We ducked into a narrow alley, shaded by tall buildings, the air cooler and carrying the faint scent of flowers from a nearby courtyard. He stopped in front of a small fountain tucked into the corner, water trickling over the stone edge in a quiet, mesmerizing rhythm. He leaned on the edge, shoulders relaxed, but his eyes searched mine with a gravity I couldn't place. "Do you ever feel like everything is about to change?" he asked, voice low, almost hesitant. I nodded slowly, words failing me. Yes, I felt it. The invisible line between us was thinning, dissolving in ways that both terrified and thrilled me. "Yeah," I whispered. He didn't speak for a long moment, and the silence between us grew heavy, almost tangible. I wanted to reach out, to close the gap, to let my hand brush against his, but I stayed frozen, caught between desire and fear. And then, almost imperceptibly, he leaned a little closer. I could feel his warmth, the subtle shift in the air as our proximity intensified. My heartbeat picked up, rapid and uneven, and I realized I was holding my breath. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words caught in my throat. The weight of everything unsaid pressed down on me. And in that pressure, I understood that this moment was a turning point. The fountain gurgled quietly, a soothing backdrop to the storm of thoughts swirling in my head. He looked at me, his gaze unwavering, and I felt exposed in a way that was thrilling and terrifying all at once. The summer had changed us, yes, but it also peeled away the layers of pretense and fear, leaving only raw, unguarded truth. "Do you think," he began, hesitating, "do you think we're ready for what's coming?" I swallowed hard. Ready or not, it was coming. The feelings we tried to ignore, the tension we danced around, were impossible to contain any longer. I don't know. I admit it, but I think we have to try. He smiled, small but full of unspoken understanding, and reached out a hand. My fingers brushed against his, and that single contact sent a shock through me that made the air feel electric. My pulse raced, my skin tingled, and I realized that nothing would ever be the same. We stayed there, hands barely touching, just looking at each other. The world continued around us, indifferent to the gravity of the moment. But for us, time seemed to stretch and bend, holding us suspended between what was and what would be. Eventually, we pulled away, both of us smiling awkwardly, a little breathless, but I could feel the shift. The line between friendship and something more had blurred irrevocably, and neither of us could ignore it any longer. Every step we took after that felt charged, each laugh, each glance, each accidental touch laden with potential. By the time the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long, golden shadows over the city, I realized how much had changed in just a single day. I wasn't the same person who had whispered words into the dark that morning. He wasn't the same either. We were both on the edge of something new, something dangerous, something that would test the boundaries of who we were and what we wanted. And yet, for the first time, I didn't feel afraid. I felt ready, because that summer, with its long days and sleepless nights, had already begun weaving its magic, pulling us toward each other in ways neither of us could resist. And whatever was coming next, the first kiss, the first confession, the first undeniable spark, I knew deep down that it would change everything. The day started like any other, but the air between us felt charged, heavy with unspoken words. Even before we left the apartment, I could feel the subtle electricity. Our movements were automatic, brushing against each other in ways that made me shiver. Yet nothing was said. Not yet. We walked side by side to the bustling streets, yet felt like we were wrapped in our own private world. The chatter of tourists, the clatter of bikes, the scent of fresh pastries from a corner bakery, all of it faded into background noise. My eyes kept finding him, lingering just a second too long, and I caught him staring back, eyes wide, searching. But searching for what? Confirmation? Permission? Or was it just curiosity? A street musician's violin filled the square as we paused near a fountain. He leaned casually against the edge, hands buried in his pockets, but there was an intensity in the way he looked at me that made my pulse quicken. I tried to meet his gaze and faltered, looking away at the water instead. My mind was spinning. Do I want this? Do I dare? We started talking. First about trivial things, the summer exhibitions in the city, the heat, a new cafe he wanted to try. But the conversation kept dipping into dangerous territory. Subtle teasing, accidental compliments, a brush of his hand when we laughed. The small touches were electrifying, each one leaving me breathless and unsure what to do with the heat pooling in my chest. At one point, he reached for my arm to steady himself as he tripped slightly over a curb. His fingers lingered longer than necessary, and the weight of that contact sent a jolt through me. I could feel my heartbeat hammering in my ears. I pulled back slightly, pretending to adjust my bag, but I could feel the flush creeping up my neck. I wanted to retreat, to find a safe space where my thoughts wouldn't betray me, but I couldn't. Every glance, every movement between us pulled me closer, deeper into the orbit of him. And then it happened, not intentionally, but inevitably. A cyclist swerved too close to the curb, and I stumbled. He caught me by the waist, holding me tight for a heartbeat that stretched too long, too intimate. Our faces were inches apart, and I could feel the warmth radiating from him. The world narrowed to that space between us, and I realized with shock how much I wanted this. Wanted to stay that close, wanted to feel that accidental intimacy again. But then someone passed, a group of tourists, their cameras snapping, oblivious to us. And I stepped back, heart hammering, mind racing with shame and thrill and confusion. Did anyone notice? What if they did? The fear made me retreat, but a part of me hated that retreat, hated that I was denying this moment, this feeling, this undeniable pull. We continued walking, the silence thick now, loaded with tension. I could feel him watching me from the corner of his eye, probably aware of the same things I was. The heat, the risk, the danger being seen, the excitement of the forbidden. I wanted to speak, to ask if he felt it too, but words seemed clumsy and inadequate. Instead, we let the silence speak, and it said too much. Later, we stopped at a small cafe, sitting at a corner table where we could see the street, without being seen ourselves. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice even though no one else was nearby. Do you ever feel like this is impossible? He asked. I swallowed hard. Every day, I admitted, and every day I think maybe I shouldn't feel at all. He nodded slowly, eyes softening. And yet here we are. I wanted to reach across the table, to close the distance, to bridge the space with something real, a hand, a touch, a confession. But fear held me back. The summer had made me bold, yes, but it also showed me just how easily desire could turn into shame, and I wasn't ready to risk it. By the time we left the cafe, the sun was dipping low, casting long shadows over the city. The walk back was quiet, each step heavy with awareness of the other's presence. When we reached the apartment, we paused at the door, hesitant to part ways. The moment hung between us, fragile and electric. I could see it in his eyes, the same mix of uncertainty, thrill, and longing that I felt. Then he did something that made my chest seize. A fleeting touch. His fingers brushing against mine as he handed me the key, and I felt a spark so intense I stumbled slightly, gripping the doorframe to steady myself. He smiled, faint, almost apologetic, but the look in his eyes was anything but. And just like that, the tension broke, or maybe it didn't. Maybe it just settled into a slow burn that neither of us could name, lingering in every look, every movement, every breath. That night, lying in bed, I replayed every glance, every brush, every accidental touch. Shame, thrill, confusion, all mixed together into a knot I couldn't unravel. I realized then that the summer wasn't just changing us. It was testing us, pushing us towards something inevitable, something I wasn't sure I could handle. But I wanted it, even if it scared me. The morning light slanted through the curtains, soft and deceptive, masking the storm of thoughts in my head. I woke to memory of last night's brush, the lingering spark of his fingers against mine, and I realized I hadn't slept at all. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the way he had looked at me, that mix of something daring and something unsure, and my stomach tightened. By the time I got out of bed, He was already in the kitchen, leaning casually against the counter with that half smile that made my chest ache. "Morning," he said, eyes lighting up when he saw me. My throat went dry. "Morning." I whispered back, words flat, too small to carry what I really felt. We decided to go out again, despite the heat. The streets were busy, people everywhere, and I felt the constant fear that someone would notice us. Someone would see the tension, the closeness, the spark between us that we could barely contain. Every laugh felt louder than it should, every brush of skin sharper, and I caught myself pulling back slightly, only to feel a tiny pang of disappointment when he mirrored my movement. We wandered into a small art gallery, cool and quiet, the smell of paint and varnish heavy in the air. I tried to focus on the paintings, on the colors and the shapes, but I kept noticing him. The way he lingered near a canvas just long enough for our hands to brush, the way his gaze flicked to mine, whenever he thought I wasn't looking. My chest tightened with each accidental touch, each stolen glance. Then it happened. I stepped back to get a better view of a painting, and he moved closer to me at the same time. Our shoulders brushed, and then his hand, deliberate, almost teasing, slid against mine. The contact was brief, but it sent fire through my veins. My heart was hammering, my breath caught in my throat. I wanted to pull away, to retreat to safety, but I couldn't. Something in me, reckless and desperate, longed for more. I felt my face flush, and I could see the same heat in his cheeks. He didn't speak, and neither did I. The silence between us was heavy, alive, full of things we both wanted but couldn't name. I wanted to ask if he felt the same, to confess the longing that had been simmering since that night I whispered into the dark. But the words died on my tongue, trapped by fear and pride. As we walked to the gallery, our shoulders kept brushing, fingers occasionally grazing, each contact sending shivers up my spine. I realized with a jolt that I was no longer thinking about anything else. The world had narrowed to him, to the possibility of him noticing, to the danger and thrill of being caught in this invisible tension. Then someone came around the corner, a friend of his from college, someone we both knew casually. Panic hit me like a punch to the stomach. My hand was still lightly touching his, and for a moment I froze, unsure what to do. He noticed too, and our hands separated almost instantly, retreating to the safety of our own spaces. "Hey!" his friend said cheerfully, oblivious of the current storm between us. "I didn't expect to see you here." We exchanged the usual small talk, but my mind was elsewhere, trapped in the remnants of that touch, that moment that had meant more than it should. The encounter ended, and once we were alone again, the tension returned, heavier than before. By mid-afternoon, we found ourselves in a quiet park, the sun warm on our backs, the grass soft beneath our feet. He lay down on the blanket we'd spread, staring at the clouds, and I couldn't resist the pull. I sat beside him, close enough that our arms brushed occasionally. The accidental intimacy of it, the nearness, the shared space, made my heart race and my thoughts spin. "Do you ever think about us?" he asked suddenly, voice low, almost vulnerable. I froze, my stomach knotting. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual, even though my pulse was erratic. He turned slightly to face me, eyes searching. About what this could be, about crossing that line we've been dancing around since the beginning of summer. I felt my cheeks burn. "I think about it more than I probably should," I admitted, voice barely audible. "And sometimes I wish I didn't have to think about it at all. But I do." He smiled, a slow, knowing curve of his lips. "Me too." The silence that followed was thick, charged. And then, impulsively, recklessly, I moved closer. Our knees touched, and I felt the electricity surge again. My hand shook slightly as I placed one hand on the blanket near his, close enough that he could feel it. He didn't pull away. Instead, he leaned slightly closer, our shoulders brushing. My mind screamed caution, warning me of the consequences, the social danger, the shame that could come if anyone saw us like this. But a bolder, more desperate part of me whispered, "This is what you want. This is what you've been waiting for." And then it happened, a moment so sudden I barely realized it. Our faces were inches apart, breaths mingling, and I felt him tilt his head slightly toward me. My pulse raced, my stomach flipped, and I realized with a jolt that a kiss was possible, inevitable. But then, as if fate intervened, a dog ran past, startling us both. We jumped apart, heartbeats colliding with shame and thrill. We laughed nervously, a little breathless, and I felt the mixture of fear and excitement spiral inside me. That kiss hadn't happened, not yet, and the tension only deepened, thickened by the near miss. Walking back toward the apartment, we remained close, yet careful. Every accidental brush of skin made me shiver. Every glance that lingered a fraction too long left me dizzy. And the social danger, the awareness that someone could see, added a sharp edge to the tension that both terrified and thrilled me. By the time we reached the door, the sun was dipping low, casting long shadows over the city streets. We paused, hesitant to part ways, trapped in a web of desire and fear. My heart thudded violently, and I realized that this summer, this tension, this dangerous closeness, it was only getting stronger, and I knew, with a mix of fear and longing, that sooner or later, we wouldn't be able to resist it any longer. The city was quiet that evening, the streets bathed in amber light as the sun dipped below the rooftops. I walked beside him, close enough that our shoulders brushed almost constantly, and my chest felt tight with anticipation. Every movement, every glance, every laugh carried the weight of what had been building between us for weeks. I could feel it in the way my stomach fluttered, in the way my fingers tingled when ours accidentally touched. We found ourselves in a small, tucked-away park, the kind that felt like it existed only for moments like this. A low fence surrounded the grassy area, and a bench sat under a sprawling tree, its leaves rustling softly in the evening breeze. We sat down side by side close, and I realized my heart was hammering in a way I couldn't control. He turned toward me, eyes dark and searching. "I can't stop thinking about it," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "About us. About what's been happening between us." I swallowed hard, heat rising to my cheeks. Me neither, I admitted. It's like I can't breathe when we're near each other, and I can't stop imagining what it would be like if... My voice trailed off, caught in the knot of desire and fear in my chest. He leaned closer just slightly, and my stomach flipped. "If what?" he prompted, eyes intent on mine, unflinching. I bit my lip, the words trembling. If we didn't hold back anymore. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached out and brushed a stray strand of hair from my face. My breath caught. The touch was bold, deliberate, intimate, and it sent sparks coursing through me. I wanted to lean into him, wanted to close the space between us, but a part of me hesitated. Social danger lurked in every corner of my mind. What if someone saw? What if this ruined everything? But the desire, the ache between us, was stronger. Before I could stop myself, I leaned in, daring and desperate. Our lips brushed lightly, testing the water, a soft, electric touch that made my head spin. My hands trembled as they hovered near his shoulders, unsure whether to move forward or retreat. He responded instantly, pressing closer, the kiss deepening in intensity. My chest tightened, my pulse racing, and I felt a thrill unlike anything I'd experienced before. Shame mingled with desire, confusion with exhilaration, and I realized I had crossed a line I could never uncross. The world around us seemed to disappear. The rustling leaves, the distant hum of traffic, the fading light, all vanished into the background as the kiss consumed us. It was daring, dangerous, and utterly intoxicating. Then, almost like punishment from the universe, a jogger passed nearby, pausing to tie his shoe. Our lips broke apart instantly, hearts racing, and I felt a wave of panic. My face burned. Did he see? Did he know? I wanted to disappear into the shadows. But he didn't move away. Instead, he laughed softly, a sound full of relief and shared thrill. "That was inevitable," he said, eyes sparkling. "I'm not even sorry." I laughed nervously, still breathless. "Neither am I admitted, and it was true. Despite the fear, the shame, the social danger, I couldn't regret it. The connection, the chemistry, the tension that had been simmering for weeks. It had finally exploded, and I felt alive in a way I hadn't before. We sat in silence for a moment, hands brushing intermittently. The thrill of what had just happened coursing through us. Then he shifted slightly, moving closer again, and I felt the boldness surge inside me. I placed my hand on his, letting it rest there, and he didn't pull away. Instead, he intertwined his fingers with mine, and a wave of warmth and certainty washed over me. "I wanted this for so long," he whispered, almost as if speaking aloud made it real. "I know," I murmured back. "Me too." The sun had set completely now, leaving the park bathed in twilight. Shadows stretched long across the grass, and the cool evening air brushed against our skin. Social danger still lingered. Any passerby could stumble upon us. Any familiar face could ruin a moment, but neither of us seemed to care anymore. The thrill of being caught, of dancing on the edge of exposure, only intensified the heat between us. Then, almost impulsively, he leaned in again, captured my lips in another kiss, more confident this time, more demanding. My hands found their way around his neck, pulling him closer, and I felt a rush of desire and vulnerability crash over me. The kiss was bold, daring, and unrestrained, a culmination of every long stare, every accidental touch, every moment of tension that had been building for weeks. When we finally broke apart, breathless and flushed, I rested my forehead against his. This changes everything," I whispered. He nodded, eyes soft, full of the same mixture of excitement and fear I felt. "I know, but it's worth it." We stayed like that for a while, sitting on the bench, hands entwined, hearts still racing. The social danger, the internal fear, the shame and thrill, all of it was still there, but it had shifted. It was no longer something to resist. It was part of the thrill, part of the bond we had forged in stolen moments and whispered confessions. As we finally stood to leave, walking back toward the city streets hand in hand, I realized that summer had changed us irrevocably. The line between friendship and something more had not only blurred, it had disappeared. And while the road ahead was uncertain, filled with potential mistakes, misunderstandings, and dangers, I knew one thing for certain. I wanted him, and he wanted me. For the first time, I didn't feel afraid. The night was unusually still, the city muted beneath a blanket of darkness. Streetlights cast pools of gold on the pavement, painting long shadows that flickered as a soft breeze stirred the air. I walked beside him, our hands entwined, though the silence between us was heavier than any words could be. Earlier, the day had felt perfect, full of laughter, long glances, the kind of comfort that came from knowing someone so intimately you could read the smallest shift in their expression. But now, walking home, the warmth between us had grown tense, fragile, as though it might shatter at the slightest touch. We paused on the corner near the bridge, the river below reflecting the city lights in ripples. He stared at the water, jaw tight, shoulders rigid. I wanted to reach out, to touch him, to ask what was wrong, but something held me back, a sense of inevitability, as if the night itself had been waiting for this moment. He started, voice low, hesitant. "I didn't mean for it to happen." I blinked, unsure what he meant. "Happen? What are you talking about?" His fingers tightened around mine. I told someone. About us. The world seemed to tilt. My chest burned, a sharp ache that left me momentarily breathless. "You what?" My voice trembled, small, fragile. "I didn't mean to," he said quickly. "It just slipped out. And now..." He trailed off, gaze fixed on the water. "Now what?" I asked, voice tight, almost a whisper. The quiet of the night pressing on me. The river's gentle hum doing nothing to soothe the storm inside. "Now, I think they know." I stared at him, disbelief, fear, and heartbreak warring inside me. Someone knew. Someone had seen the delicate truth of us, the fragile tension we had built over weeks. The thought made my stomach churn, made the air feel suddenly thin. "Do they?" I asked, voice barely audible. "Yes," he admitted. "I think they do. And I don't know what to do. I don't know how to fix it." I wanted to shout, to scream, to demand he take it back, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I let the silence fill the space between us. The river moved beneath us, indifferent, the city lights shimmering like distant stars. And in that quiet, I felt the weight of everything collapse onto me, the longing, the secrecy, the vulnerability. He turned to me then, eyes dark and raw. "I didn't want to hurt you," he whispered. "I didn't want it to get out." "I know," I said, voice shaking. "But it did. And now," my chest tightened, the words failing me. "I don't know if I can." He pulled me into his arms suddenly, holding me tightly, as though he could shield me from the consequences with sheer force. I rested my head against his chest, listening to the rapid beat of his heart, and felt the mix of comfort and devastation twisting inside me. "I'm scared," he murmured, voice muffled against my hair. "I didn't think it would matter, but it does. It matters so much, and now it's too late." I whispered, though the words were bitter on my tongue. It's always too late with people who can't understand, who see what we have and turn it into something else. He stayed silent, holding me as the night pressed down on us. The intimacy we had shared, the kisses, the touches, the quiet laughter, now felt fragile, like glass ready to shatter. My mind replayed every stolen moment, every glance, and I realized how close we had come to losing it all. "I don't want to lose you," he said finally, voice low, almost breaking. "Not like this. Not ever." I looked up at him, eyes brimming with unshed tears. "I don't want to lose you either. But we can't control what people think, or what they say, or what they see." He nodded slowly, letting go of me just enough to hold my face in his hands. "Then we'll face it together," he said softly. "No matter what." For a moment, the tension eased slightly. I wanted to believe him, to cling to the warmth and trust we had built. But the fear lingered, gnawing at the edges of my heart. The exposure, the betrayal, whether intentional or accidental, had changed the night, changed the weight of our secret world. Together, I echoed, trying to steady my voice, though it trembled. "Always." We stood there for a long time, just holding on to each other, letting the night stretch around us. And yet, beneath the quiet intimacy, the fear lingered, the knowledge that once the secret was out, nothing would ever be the same. Then, almost without warning, he kissed me. It was soft, desperate, a tether to connection we both feared might break. The kiss carried every emotion we've been holding in: longing, guilt, shame, thrill, and love. My hands clutched at his shoulders, anchoring myself to him as the night swirled around us, heavy and intimate. When we finally broke apart, our foreheads pressed together, breathing uneven, I realized how fragile everything had become. The city around us hummed softly, the river moving endlessly beneath the bridge, as though oblivious to our small, intense storm. I'm not leaving," he said, voice low, firm, though there was a tremor in it. "No matter what happens. I promise." I closed my eyes, letting the weight of his words sink in. "I believe you," I whispered, though the fear still lingered, gnawing at the edges of my certainty. "I want to." For the first time that night, I felt a small flicker of hope. Amid the fear, the exposure, the looming threat of judgment, we had each other. And maybe that was enough to survive the night, survive the revelation, survive the fragility of our world. We stayed there, pressed together under the dim light, letting the silence speak louder than words. Short sentences, whispers, half confessions. Everything carried a weight we couldn't ignore. The world outside the park was a threat, but in this small cocoon, we existed only for each other. And yet, even in that quiet intimacy, the night had already changed us. We could feel it in the tremor of our hands, the catch of our breath, the heaviness in our hearts. Nothing would ever be the same after this night. The night deepened around us, folding the city into shadows. We walked slowly, hands barely touching at first, the tension from earlier still simmering in the spaces between us. Every step felt deliberate, as though the ground beneath us might crumble if we moved too quickly. We paused on the small bridge overlooking the river, the water below black and silent. I could feel him stiffen beside me. His hands were clenched at his sides, and when he finally spoke, his voice was tight, controlled, but fraying at the edges. "They're talking," he said. I froze. "Who?" "About us. About everything." His eyes searched mine, desperate, searching for understanding. I didn't think it would get this far. I thought I could keep it contained. The weight of it hit me like a physical blow. I pressed my hands to my face, trying to hide the tremor in my fingers, the ache in my chest. I trusted you, I whispered. I trusted you with everything. I know, he said softly, but his voice trembled. I know you did, and I'm sorry. I never meant for anyone to know. Not yet. Not yet. The words came sharp, jagged. Do you have any idea what you've done? I didn't do it on purpose, he said, and I could hear the strain in his voice. It was a mistake. He broke off, running a hand through his hair. I just wanted to be honest. I didn't think it would hurt you like this. I shook my head, tears spilling over. You don't get it. It's not just a mistake. People, they'll talk. They'll judge. They'll see everything we've shared and twist it into something ugly. He reached for me then, hesitant, as though afraid I would recoil. I still have you, though, right? The question struck me like a knife. I wanted to believe it. I wanted to trust him. But the sting of betrayal, however unintentional, burned too deeply. I don't know, I said, voice breaking. I don't know if I can. I feel exposed, vulnerable. And you, my words faltered. I don't even know what you feel. I feel the same, he said quickly, stepping closer. I feel scared. I feel guilty. But I feel everything with you. And I can't, his voice caught. I can't let this ruin us. I wanted to reach for him, to believe him, but my chest was too tight, my thoughts too chaotic. I need you to understand how fragile this is, how much we've risked, and now it feels like it's all slipping through our fingers. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Then let me hold you. Let me remind you that we're still here, that it's still us. I hesitated, trembling. Finally, I let him pull me into his arms. The warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart, the strength in his hold. It was comforting, but it couldn't erase the fear gnawing at the edges of my mind. I buried my face against his chest, listening to his whispered promises, his soft reassurances. They can't touch this, he murmured. They can't take what's ours. I'm not sure that's true, I whispered back. Once people know, everything changes. And I don't know if I can face that. He pulled back just enough to look at me, his eyes glistening in the dim light. Then we face it together. I'll take it all with you. The judgment, the whispers, everything, but I won't let go. The honesty in his voice, the rawness of it, made my tears spill over. I wanted to scream, to cry, to collapse into him and let all the fear, all the pain, all the shame pour out. I'm scared, I admitted, voice trembling. Scared of losing you, scared of losing myself. I know, he said softly, cupping my face. I'm scared too, but we can't let that stop us. Not now. The night wrapped around us, intimate and heavy. The city silent except for the faint rustle of leaves and the distant hum of traffic. I let myself lean into him, let the tremor in my body settle into the warmth of his arms. The world felt precarious, teetering on the edge. Yet in that moment, I allowed myself to feel safe, however briefly. And then, with deliberate care, he kissed me again. This time was slower, deeper, urgent but tender. It carried all the fear, all the regret, all the longing that had been building between us. I clung to him, hands pressed against his chest, feeling the tremor in his body mirror my own. When we finally broke apart, gasping slightly, we stood in silence, foreheads pressed together. My tears were gone now, replaced by a fierce, fragile clarity. We can't pretend anymore, I whispered. Not with ourselves, not with anyone else. He nodded, voice quiet but certain. We don't have to. Not now. Not ever again. A breeze swept through the bridge, carrying the faint scent of the river and the city. The night was still, heavy with everything we hadn't said, everything we feared, everything we were. But in that weight, I felt a strange strength, the knowledge that even though the world might judge, even though exposure and betrayal had threatened us, we had survived it together. I'm here, he said softly. I'm not going anywhere. I know, I whispered, resting my head against his chest again. I know. The silence stretched between us, intimate and heavy. Short sentences, whispered confessions, quiet reassurances. Everything was distilled to its barest form, raw and unfiltered. And in that quiet, in that moment, I realized that the night had changed us irrevocably. The fear, the shame, the thrill. It was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but it no longer controlled us. We had faced the exposure, the emotional breakdown, the betrayal, and emerged on the other side. And as we walked back toward the faint glow of the city streets, hands intertwined, hearts still trembling, I knew that whatever came next, judgment, whispers, misunderstanding, we would face it together. The night had been heavy, intimate and raw, but it had also been a turning point. Everything had changed. Some things couldn't be undone. The whispers, the accidental exposure, the fear that had gripped us that night, they lingered longer than either of us wanted. But time, as it always does, softened the edges. We talked again, quietly, carefully, threading honesty through every word. Regret lingered, but it wasn't enough to break what had been built between us. We didn't hide it forever. We didn't need to. What mattered was that we had survived the storm, that we had faced the fear together, and that our connection had only deepened. Every stolen glance, every lingering touch carried a memory of that night. Heavy, intimate, irrevocable. And yet, there was tenderness now, a quiet understanding that we had been tested and had endured. The city around us felt lighter, the summer warmer, the moments shared richer because of the weight we had carried and the trust we had rebuilt. I often caught myself looking at him and thinking about that first kiss, that trembling hand, that whispered confession. It wasn't just a memory. It was a marker of who we had become. Intertwined, unshakable, fearless in the face of what the world thought we should be. And sometimes, in the quiet of the evening, when the sun set golden across the rooftops, I would rest my head against his shoulder and whisper into the hush between us, "I'm yours." And he would smile softly, brushing a stray strand of hair from my face, his eyes reflecting the same unspoken truth. And I'm yours too. The summer had changed everything, and yet, in its aftermath, it had given us everything we didn't even know we were searching for: each other. We want to hear from you. In one word, how did this story make you feel? Were you confused, seen, heartbroken, exposed, or something else entirely? If this story resonated with you, or if you experienced something similar, share your own story in the comments. Your voice matters, and someone out there might feel the same way you do. Let's create a space where we can connect, reflect, and share these powerful, unforgettable moments.